Okay, we are sort of live, recording live. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much for being on. Go ahead, let's explain everybody who you are, what you do. I'm super excited about this episode. Like, I'm really excited. So,
Oh,
let everybody know who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff.
awesome. I'm excited too. So my name's Dr. Jen Pfleghaar. I go by Dr. Jen though, as my last name is very hard to spell and pronounce. And I am board certified in emergency medicine and also board certified in integrative medicine. So I went to residency for ER. I love ER, but then when I went into my real job, I kept seeing the same patients over and over again in the ER, the same problem, not getting better. And I was like, there has to be a different way. So I went back and did an integrative medicine fellowship, and I'm super passionate about preventative medicine, getting to the root cause. And that's what I'm all about. I still work in the ER though too. So I see all of the craziness in the ER and keep up to date with all the conventional medicine stuff. But I'm pretty unconventional with integrative medicine, not the average doctor.
It's pretty. That's something that's kind of crazy that you see the same patients in the ER. My mom was a nurse and she worked in
Yeah.
emergency rooms. Like that was her big thing in the NICU and all sorts of
Oh,
different things. So, and she if anybody was meant to be a nurse, it was my mom for sure.
oh.
But I find that's interesting that you said you took care of the same people over and over in the ER. That's supposed to be the emergency room.
Right, but our healthcare system, it has some issues, and I would see the same person coming back in, and a few different people, but this one woman in particular, I mean, she knew I was having when I was having a baby, like how much longer, a couple more weeks, right? Like she would like have conversations with me, and because she knew me like that well, because I was in there all the time, and but it was funny because what we would do, so there's like some patients that don't like certain doctors that are working. So if they knew that they were working, they would leave the waiting room. If they heard them get like paged overhead for a call or something, and they're like, oh, they just left because, I mean, you don't really get to pick who you see in the ER. So if they know that they're not their favorite, then they'll leave. But it's because the ER. I mean, people sometimes they can't get into a primary care doctor. They don't have access. There's so many holes. So that's one thing I liked about the ER, is that it's kind of like the catch-all. Like if you need help, and we're in America, we should be able to get healthcare and access to it. Then the ER is there. We're here. We're the soldiers. We're gonna help you out if you need it. So I'm so grateful for the ER, and I love it. And I one thing I love about medicine in general is that people trust me with all their things, and I really covet that. And I just think it's so special. I think it's really special. Like I'm very blessed that I got called into this profession. So, like you said, like your mom, it was just meant to be a nurse. I mean, it takes a certain heart to work in the healthcare field. That's for sure.
It really and truly does. Like, and you need people that really. It's kind of like teachers that have to deal with kids all day long, and like if you don't
Oh,
love doing that, kids are going to drive you crazy. And if you don't love taking care of people when they're sick and in their worst moods and trying to fix them and help them, like if that's not your purpose, you're going to be terrible at the job.
right. Oh yeah, bless those teachers because my kids, so I have 4 kids, and I their teachers are amazing because sometimes kids are difficult. You got to do the 4-7-8 breath and really calm down. I have to use that a lot.
Well, this is going to lead right into what I really want to talk about is because the madness of schools reopening, and all the like sports, we've got that where they don't want to let kids basically all the way up to college level play ball. They, activities are shut down. People are unsure. I'm not really blaming everybody's reaction because there's so much different information coming in. I have my opinion, but I'm not a doctor. You're a doctor. Like, that's why I'm excited to have somebody on here that can talk about it. And I'm curious what your thoughts and safety wise for kids and their susceptibility transferring to adults, if you know any of that stuff, any advice that you have for people wanting to get their kids back and being social again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll talk about that. So I wanted to say I'm going to talk about the research and my opinion, but I don't want anyone to take this for medical advice, okay? Talk with your own doctor. So for COVID-19, SARS-2, the coronavirus, all this stuff that's been going on since March, it's been such a whirlwind, okay? The thing that we have to realize still, we don't know everything about this virus. We just don't. It's new. It's a novel virus. It's not like the other coronaviruses that are just the common cold or the rhinovirus that we get all the time and kids need to get, and we need to develop immunity to those things. So when schools were first shut down, that was mitigation. So we were trying to slow down the curve because we didn't want our hospitals to get overburdened and there to be a big spike. And that's for infectious disease, that's kind of a common thing for something that is so contagious. And the thing about COVID-19 is it's more contagious, but it's more that incubation period that it's not like the flu where your kids have a fever and, if you're a good parent, you keep them home. I mean, we all know some parents give them Tylenol and send them to school, but that's not the right thing. But we all know that, you keep your kids home when they're sick. So the weird thing about this is that people can shed it, and it's a longer incubation period, meaning time from when you have it and start possibly be shedding it versus when you feel sick. So that's what made this all crazy, is that we're like walking around and healthy with it. So with everything being closed down, so here we go, we go through the whole summer. It's time to open up schools again. I have two of my kids are back right now, and one is doing remote, and she might go back October 1st. And we're in Ohio, and I know everyone is different. And my kid in preschool, the teachers are wearing masks, but the kids aren't, because they're 3 and 4 and 5 years old. They're not really going to wear a mask properly. And then we have other kids going to school wearing the mask the whole time. So the reason why is that we're more worried that the kids are going to be transmitting it to everyone else and between families, because we're finding that children are either not getting as sick, their mortality or the death rate is lower. And they're more worried about the kids passing this on, bringing it home, and then the adults getting sick and passing on to older people. So the people that are more susceptible for morbidity or mortality, so bad outcomes or death from coronavirus, we're seeing people with more health problems like high blood pressure, diabetes, with different comorbidities, metabolic syndrome, all of that. In Italy, where it hit really hard, there was an older population and they smoked cigars and smoked cigarettes there. So you can pick all these studies and pick out, what makes you more susceptible, what's a risk factor. So, with kids in sports, what are they doing where you live right now?
I think the football's back. It's Texas. So nothing's going to stop football in Texas. You might the world would have to end first, and they would still probably try to play.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, they're really trying to figure out the school. Some sports are not going. Like my son's tennis, for some reason, is not going. I don't understand why that is, and football is playing. Because it's definitely more, you can be more separated on a tennis court than you can on the football field. But I know they're just trying to figure all this stuff out. So it's not something that I'm like, why aren't you doing that? This is crazy. They've got a lot of stuff on their plate. But as far as they've been playing little league tournaments on the weekends and really doing a good job of organizing it where, as best they can to be as safe as they can. So it's kind of slowly but surely opening up here for that kind of stuff.
Right. I think it makes it difficult because we don't know exactly how well the masks work, with this particular virus. I was all about wearing a mask at first, and I will wear a mask to a grocery store or somewhere where people that are more susceptible might be not against their will, but they have to go to the grocery store. There was like a bizarre, my daughter had a volleyball game, and the girls and the spectators, only one family member per girl. So I went, and so we all wore a mask. The spectators had to wear a mask. So I'm there cheering on my daughter. You know, she can't see my facial expressions. It's so weird. And the girls are all playing together, not wearing masks. So I'm like, just common sense, like not even if you're in the medical field, just common sense. So if my household had coronavirus and, you know, I went to, you know, and I wore my mask, but my daughter's playing with the other parents' daughters, they're going to transmit it and bring, you know, it just doesn't make sense. But the kids need sports. You know, I think a lot of these things they're doing, like checking your temperature, where some of these thermometers, I don't like the thermal ones. I don't think they're that accurate. It's just, that's a false sense of security. You know, I like it if it was like a better maybe device, but you know, I think some of this is not very evidence-based. We're kind of going by trying to make everyone feel better, which I like evidence. I'm very evidence-based. So I'm like, okay, check my temperature when we come in, ask if I have symptoms or if I've been sick. But like, if I'm wearing a mask as a spectator, but all the girls are playing with each other, and like, if someone really was sick, I mean, it just, you know, so that kind of thing with the sports confuses me from a logical standpoint. But I think what we would need is just more testing. And some colleges are doing this. They're testing more. And I think that's more appropriate, but you're going to find more cases if you test more. So I think if we were testing more and you had a family that someone tested positive, then they're quarantined for 2 weeks and they're not going to spread it, you know. But if you're not testing everyone, then you could have more cases. So I just think we're just not there yet, you know, with figuring all this out. And that's okay. I'm just happy that my kids are going back to sports. The reason why is our kids need to get together. They need to play. They need to be with each other. I've seen so much more depression, suicidal ideations, anxiety in the ER in teens and in kids. And who knows if this is going to have a post-traumatic stress type syndrome for kids going through this pandemic. I mean, could you imagine going to kindergarten for the first time and everyone's wearing a mask, like from a horror movie? I mean, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's wild to me. Like, and when you say common sense, that's what I mean, that's all I use. I look at, does that make sense? And it's really funny you point that out, because I don't know. Like, I don't know if masks work or not. I'm not judging whether they do or don't. And I wear one whenever they require me to wear one going into a grocery store or whatever. I'm going to be nice to people because, I mean, that's what I would do if I had the flu. So why not do it with anything? I don't want to give anybody any illness. So, but I just I noticed something. I was like, they made this mandate here in our town at like 6:30 on a Thursday that everybody had to wear a mask everywhere, right? And obviously it's not a law. They can't really enforce it or whatever, but they were finding businesses that got caught. And I looked at it, I was like, this is a fail-safe for everybody to claim. So it's like a cover your own butt type of deal where they say, wear your mask so we can flatten the curve. And I go, my only question was, how do you know everybody's wearing masks or not? Like, it's an impossible thing to gauge. So if it goes up, you can say, well, you're not wearing your mask. If it goes down, you can say, everybody wore their mask. We're good. And I go, I think you should be spreading a message more of like health. I think this is a real eye-opener for health and fitness activities, and like keeping your, like you said, you got into preventative medicine, and that right there is, I think this has been a real big eye-opener that some people have chose to accept, and some people are just reverting back to, I don't want to accept it, that I have control over my health and immune system and can fight harder against these type of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, going back to the masks real quick, I mean, if I was not wearing proper PPE, working in the ER, and I was exposed to someone with COVID-19, I would quarantine myself for 2 weeks, So, and like you were saying, you want to be nice and wear the mask, but it with the kids with the sport, it's just kind of confusing. And I think we're going to get there. I think there's just been so much fear too. And my big thing, what I like to teach on, like on my Instagram, is facts over fear. Who's getting sick, what can you do to decrease your risk for getting sick, like that hashtag immune health. Did you see how that was it was like banned for a little bit on social media?
I didn't see that. No, I didn't know that.
It was crazy. You would do hashtag like immune health and click on it, and it would say this link is something, and then it would like refer you to the CDC website.
What?
Yeah, it was crazy. And because I would post stuff, what you can do to boost your immune, health, and we can, talking about that for prevention. So, kind of like you're just preparing your little soldiers, your little body, your immune system, you're preparing them for war. Back to school time in general is like, it is what it is. You're sending your kids in and they're going to get some germs. So my thing is always, I want to prepare my children to go in there and be exposed to germs because it's inevitable. I think us trying to hide from viruses that we've lived with for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years is kind of crazy. I mean, we're supposed to live with viruses and bacteria, but it's when it's an overgrowth or our immune system is not working properly or not in balance is when we have issues. So with my kiddos, I try to feed them properly, but it's kids, so you do the best you can. And then I give them supplements, big ones for back to school. I try to make sure they're getting enough zinc, vitamin C, and then I've added quercetin because quercetin is a zinc ionophore, so it helps bring zinc into the cells, and then zinc is effective against viruses. So there's things that you can do to prevent. And I have my parents, they're traveling to Sedona this weekend, and I have them taking their zinc, quercetin, and vitamin C for their immune health. And I gave, them having them masked obviously on the plane. So I think prevention, like you said, is key here.
So with kids, do you have their levels tested so you know how much to give them? Do you suggest people like go get them tested, or is there a safe amount that you can I know you can't say amounts and all that stuff, and we talked about that, but is there can they just go buy a supplement at H-E-B, or you don't have H-E-Bs up there, supermarkets?
Yeah.
Is that something that's good to do that will work just fine for what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so most multivitamins are going to have the recommended daily amount. So you can just go online and type in, daily recommended amount of zinc, and it will bring you there. It's like a government website too that has recommended daily amounts, and there's like a toxic level and all of that. So if you look at like kids multivitamins, so what it's doing is it's filling in the nutritional gaps. So I have my kids take a multivitamin just because they're not always going to eat their vegetables. I mean, and our vegetables, because of monocropping, they're not as rich in nutrients anyway, but it's going to fill in the gap. So you want to make sure that, a good multivitamin is good to fill in those nutritional gaps of, things like zinc and B vitamins, which are great for methylation and detoxification and stuff like that. But you're not going to see like quercetin in that. And then vitamin C, sometimes you want to dose that twice a day if they're sick, because that is metabolized quickly. So a good multivitamin is a good place to start. I do recommend that you get a methylated folate and not folic acid, which is the synthetic. It's easier to plug into that methylation cycle and use. So, and then you can you can add on, things like elderberry. Glutathione is great for detoxification also. Because the other thing I worry about with our kids is they're being exposed to all these chemicals with the cleaning agents, you know?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
it's crazy. I mean, I luckily the preschool that my one son goes to, it's just like they're using basically pure alcohol spray. It's pretty clean, but I just worry, Cloroxing everything, and they're breathing this in, and they're touching it, it's getting on their skin. So that's where glutathione is going to kind of help detox. My kids take a supplement that has N-acetylcysteine in it. It's called NAC, and it's a kind of a precursor to glutathione. So they take that. It's this called D-Hist. It tastes like kind of like candy. So they take it because I mean, hey, I'm full disclosure honest all the time. I mean, it's hard to get kids to take supplements like if they don't like how they taste. I mean, it's a struggle. Like my one son, we have him take cod liver oil, which is also another great supplement for immune support and inflammation. And he gives us a hard time sometimes, which I don't blame him. But
No, cod liver oil sounds. I mean, fish oil has always been good. Like we supplement with that sort of stuff, but we don't give it. We don't give that to our kids or anything. We don't make them take that. We have started like way back. I mean, way back when this first was going through. We're like, we need to start taking vitamin C. A little bit more vitamins, eat more. We already ate a lot of vegetables anyway as a family, but we just put more of a priority on the amounts and, just watched what we took in. But is something like those little gummy vitamin C's, is that a good thing to supplement if we, look up and take those things? Or should we be looking at something more like that multivitamin, like the Flintstone type thing?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend Flintstones. Smarty Pants, they have methylated vitamins. They're pretty good. Like Metagenics there's a lot of different brands. If you like more like the chalky, Orthomolecular has a good one. So I think it's good, if your kid will take it. The vitamin C gummies, yeah, just beware of gummies. Like I cringe, like sometimes, like with the sugar content. You want to make sure high fructose corn syrup, make sure there's not any dyes in there, So just be mindful of that. Like I said, with kids, it's hard. One thing I do with my kids that are my patients in my integrative medicine office, if they like smoothies, it's like awesome because we can put so many things in a smoothie. Like gut health, like L-glutamine to help the gut. I mean, there's all sorts of powders too you can get of vitamins or multivitamins even in powders, and then you could put it in a smoothie, a fruit and vegetable smoothie, and then they could take it that way. So my kids are hit or miss with smoothies, so I don't think that they would get it that way, but like whatever works for your family. But smoothies or mixing in a little bit of applesauce, those are a good way to get that in. Because another thing my kids take is probiotics.
Oh, do you give them a specific probiotic, or you like get it through food like kimchi and that sort of stuff?
Oh man, I wish my older kids would eat kimchi. Do your kids eat kimchi?
Sometimes, yeah. I think some of them do. Okay. I'm trying to remember. I know we eat it because we like it. Like we just like it anyway. But
the only kid that will eat fermented food, they'll drink kombucha. So my 12-year-old and my 4-year-old will drink kombucha. So that's amazing. My 8-year-old will not, and he's the one, he has a little bit of yeast overgrowth. I just got his organic acid test back, which I knew he did. I just needed the results. So it's going to be painful with him to go through the process, because he's my difficult, supplement taker. And then, so the only one that will actually eat like fermented sauerkraut stuff and like kimchi is my 11-month-old.
Is sauerkraut works the same way since it's fermented? It's a probiotic as well?
Yeah, if you get fermented sauerkraut, but don't heat it up. Because I remember my mom would, we'd have pork and sauerkraut or kielbasa, and it would be warmed up. Well, then it's not a probiotic. So yeah, it has to be like that cold. I put it in salads. It's so good. I just got a really good one.
Oh,
But
we love it. Me and my wife
yeah,
love it.
yeah, I mean, if your kids are doing that, that's great. I mean, another thing is just playing in dirt. I let my infant, my 11-year-old, I let him eat dirt. I mean, eat a rock. Someone's like, "Oh my gosh, he has a rock in his mouth," and I'm like, "Oh, it's good for him." Those spore-based probiotics that are in dirt and stuff. I mean, we're living in such a clean environment. Our kids aren't running around barefoot. So I think that letting your kids kind of play in dirt and soil, that's another way to kind of diversify their gut. But kudos to you that your kids that they like fermented food. I'm like jealous when I like see other parents and their kids are like eating like kimchi and sauerkraut, and I'm like, oh, I can only get 1 out of 4 to do that. I'm like failing. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, they will drink the kombucha, so that's a win. They actually fight over certain flavors.
That's funny. That's funny. I mean, ours will drink the kombucha because they think it's like a treat. Like we drink mainly
Yeah.
water. We don't have sodas at all. Like zero sodas, no sugary drinks. Like we don't drink sugar and anything that sort of stuff. That's just our lifestyle. So I guess it kind of makes it easier, but at the same time, they still are kids, and there's a lot of things they won't eat, they won't do, and that sort of thing because they're kids, and that's what they do. But the interesting thing tying that in, do you think some of this, like obviously the socialization, I know that's super important because we're social beings, and the kids coming to see you that are with depression and they're struggling. Like my brother, I mean, he's awesome. I love him, but he has been uber scared this entire time, fearful. And in his house, his kids have been, quarantined, which I get it that he's scared. I try not to make fun of him or anything, even though he's my brother, but I I get I think there's like two different things here that I wonder would happen. You talked about eating dirt in the kids, the probiotics there and the things that they get, and then the anti-socialization of the kids. So if you stay home, you're not getting exposed to anything at all. Like even as an adult, like me, if I just stayed inside my house or just away from everything, I wouldn't be exposed in my common sense way. And also, my kids are not being exposed. So if they get it and bring it home, I'm more susceptible to getting it.
Yeah, so it's kind of like what, like, the kid in the glass bubble that grew up, in a glass bubble or something, yeah, if you're just not being exposed to anything, I mean, your immune system is gonna get a little sleepy. One thing, like, especially having an infant, when I'm breastfeeding my kids, I want them to get colds because, I want them to get over it, get the antibodies from the breast milk, and be stronger, have their immune system be stronger. So, yeah, the concern, I mean, that is a concern, and I wish that they would do like a study on that, people that have stayed home and not done anything versus the people that have been, out, to the grocery store and stuff. Because that's the thing, even if you're going to the grocery store, you're wearing gloves, you're wearing a mask, you're still being exposed to things. Unless you're wearing an N95 mask, one of those respirators, or what we wear in the ER. And that even being said, there are ER doctors that have been in full PPE and they've still gotten COVID. So,
That's
I,
insane.
yeah, I mean, and that's because there's high risk procedure. I mean, if you're in full PPE and you're intubating someone and their secretions are coming up, and I mean, nothing's perfect. So yeah, I think the whole thing, and like you said with your brother, my sister's kind of the same way. They might not even see us for Christmas because we're more risky. Our kids play sports. My one son's going to preschool. We've had select families over, knowing that it's more risky, but we're not going to hang out with someone if they're like, oh, I was diagnosed with COVID, or I was at a restaurant where someone was at, we're not being that risky, but at the same time, we are social beings. We need that social response. But yeah, my sister is more kind of like your brother. They're not scared. They're just, she would feel bad if there was a bad outcome, she said, with her kids. Now, my feeling is I'm going to prepare my kids to be strong. We're going to have a regimen and supplements that if we get COVID, we're going to stick with it. And we're going to trust our bodies. We're not going to be fearful. And my kids are going to be happy and be social because oh my gosh, like my husband is such a social being, and I am too, but I could be a little more introverted and just be a nerd and study, and be on my own too. But yeah, they really need it. And I worry about like your brother or my sister that maybe, they're not getting that social time as much as they should with the face-to-face and the interactions, and how that is for their health. So one quick story, when I was doing a lot of telemedicine for a telemedicine company when COVID first hit in March and April, because I felt like it was my duty. My husband was home to help with the kids, so I would sign on a couple hours and do it. And I would see patients like in New York City even, because they opened up all the medical license. Usually it's just state by state, but they opened it up for other states so we could help. Because people in New York, it was getting hit really bad there. And I would see patients that were alone in their apartments for 2 to 4 weeks. And they were so lonely and so anxious, and they couldn't meet with their therapist like they normally would, just crying to me. And I'm a new person just on telemedicine. They've never met me before, and like just pouring out their emotions. And I'm like, this is okay, because they were scared that they were going to get corona and die because the media, and because they were following, directions and staying in. Oh, it broke my heart. I mean, I won't forget the people that I've talked to on the telemedicine that were so anxious. It was heartbreaking. And I wonder what the long-term consequence of that social isolation and that fear, is causing.
The fear is something, obviously, I may have a few wires loose growing up in action sports stuff and doing that sort of thing, where I'm not like crazy, I'm not wild, but I also, man, there's no way I can live in fear of anything. If it takes me, it takes me. And that's just the way I go. Like, I do my best I can, but I know that I cannot, if it's going to get to me, it's going to get to me one way or the other. So I better be willing to fight. And so that's why I want to have my immune system good and be as healthy as possible and keep the family healthy. But I do not like the narrative. Anytime somebody brings me something with fear, whether it's a life insurance salesman, a car insurance salesman, whatever it is, buy the security system. Otherwise, you could have. I'm like, what? Like, you're trying to sell me on fear now. Now you're trying to play on my emotions. And I think a lot of people with the unknown, like this was, which it is, can be scary. The unknown is scary for a lot of people. And so I'm not at all saying that they shouldn't have been, fearful of whatever, but recognizing it, not letting that take over, I think is super important for not only us as adults, but then we also get to be an example towards the people that we're around. And that's infectious. It's infectious to other families, other, kids, and so on, our friends and everything else.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I've tried to really focus on, like during the pandemic, is like the facts over fear, and here are the articles, and here's what you can do to be proactive. And gosh, and tell people to shut the news off. Just turn it off. I got caught up into it. It was crazy. So when it first happened, like, we were watching the news just because we're like, what's happening? And there were like rumors that the National Guard was going to come in. And then we watched that movie Outbreak. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
And I'm like, why did we just watch this? And I was anxious, and I don't get anxious anymore since changing my meditation, my gratitude. But I was like, And I told my husband, I'm like, why did we watch that? And I'm like, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm like, we're going to be safe. This is okay. There's nothing we could do to change what's going on. Let's be proactive. But yeah, I could see, you watch some crazy movies, you watch the news, you get on Facebook, and all those negative feelings multiply, and our brain hangs on to that, and then our sympathetic system kicks in. Then you're not sleeping well because your sympathetic system is on haywire, and then you start to go crazy. I mean, we need healthy, good sleep. And we need our brains to be in that positivity state. So, I think that overall, I feel like we did okay. Like, everyone was united, for the healthcare workers, and we turned a corner, I felt, and it was great to see. But yeah, it was just a crazy time. I mean, our kids, they'll look back and they'll be like, we lived through a pandemic, right? I mean, kind of crazy.
It is crazy. I also look at it, obviously, I look at the positive side of a lot of things. And when it first happened, I'm like, this is a chance we get to show our kids and others how to react to something that is scary. So you can go one way or the other. Like, you can take a step back and look at how you're going to overcome the obstacle and weigh all your options and take in the proper information. Or you could go the other way and freak out and panic and spread that down from generation to generation to generation. And so, like, the positive thing is, like, maybe it also helps that my grandparents were older, especially when they had my dad, and so they lived through the Depression, and I got to listen to their stories of all this, and I'm like, oh man, like, nothing lives up to what they lived through, and I heard it secondhand through them. But those stories impacted me so much as a little kid. I'm like, oh, I mean, we can get through this. I mean, my grandpa had tuberculosis through the Depression. I don't know that it gets worse than that. And he lived.
Wow.
But you being in Ohio with all this mess, and I always say the virus is not political. Like, it doesn't care what side you're on. It doesn't care where your vote's going. The virus, just like any virus or illness, doesn't care who you're voting for at all or what the media is saying. It works totally biased when it comes to that. So I've wondered, and you're in Ohio, which makes this super interesting, and I didn't know this before you came on, is that I think they banned hydroxychloroquine up there, right?
Yeah. They banned it. Gosh, that was like a month ago or something, because I did a video on it. I was mad, and it got like tons of views. It was crazy. So it's on my Instagram if anyone wants to watch it. So I was so mad because they were basically like taking away physician rights. So the board of pharmacy was blocking it, and then the governor actually lifted it and said it was okay. And yeah, but for a while there, we were not allowed to prescribe it. It was getting blocked, all this stuff. And I'm like, this is this is informed consent, and this is a patient-doctor relationship. How can you tell us, what to do? Yeah, and all those crazy videos, and that's the thing. So another thing I did when the pandemic first started is I dove deep into the evidence and research for SARS-1, which is the MERS, and that is like SARS-2, and then there's a bunch of different of these novel viruses, and the research for SARS-1, they tested it with hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine, and because they're zinc ionoform. So the zinc ionophore, quercetin's a natural one. So that's why we take it and my parents take it. And the hydroxychloroquine, that's in the studies, that's why me and like my colleagues have been talking. That's why we think that the studies are so bad, because it's given later, where really, if it's going to be working to pull zinc in as one of the properties, that it should be given more prophylactically or early when you get the illness. So yeah, it's very interesting, because when when healthcare kind of is political, but when stuff like that just becomes political, I mean, it's a no-win situation. And, some people are concerned, that this is a big push to have, a vaccine. And I have concerns about that because it's an RNA vaccine, which we don't have one of yet for many reasons. I was reading an article how RNA vaccines, they've been researching them for cancer and all this different things because it does different things in the body when it's injected. But there is a slight increase of autoimmune diseases that they're concerned about with how it reacts with the body. And then the AstraZeneca vaccine trial got suspended. That was big in the news last week. It got suspended because someone in the study got transverse myelitis, which is a severe autoimmune disease of the spinal cord.
Jeez.
Which is very rare. And I looked up, there was an article, and it was looking at vaccine adverse reactions from like 1970 to 2010 or something like that. I have the study linked on my Instagram account, but there was only 37 cases of transverse myelitis documented, and that's probably like hundreds of thousands of vaccines, given between that time. So because someone's like, oh, it's only one person that got this. And I'm like, yeah, one person in one trial. And this is a very rare. So it's good. They're backing up. They halted the study. Cause my only concern is that's an acute autoimmune disease that we can quantify because it happened right after you gave it in this trial. If it was related, they're not sure if it was or not. We can't prove that. But what about the other autoimmune diseases years down, or what's going to happen years down after giving this? I don't think we should rush into anything when we're trying to modulate and change and react our immune system to something. I see too much autoimmune disease and sickness like that in my integrative medicine practice, and it's really debilitating and difficult. So, because you were saying political, the vaccine thing, that's kind of a political push too, or a financial push. Who knows? But I don't want us to get sick. I don't want to see people suffering. I took an oath.
I think that's the toughest thing, is that people should put that aside and just, like, who cares if the president took it? Who cares what Biden is saying, or anybody on either side? Like, who cares about that? You should do what's best for your health. Like, that's what doctors are there for. They're there to take care of your health, and it's unbiased. And you can say, like, okay, so the president took it. If it works, that's why he took it. Like, he's a human. He just has a different belief than you. So, but they're making it really confusing to know what's truthful. Like, there's so much that and your BS meter can go off. You can listen to something and go, I don't know that that's right. But they said it, and they said they had studies or something, but it just doesn't seem like what they're telling me is correct. And you'll hear another one, you're like, yeah, but I feel like there's too many holes in that. And I just want the truth.
I know, but will we ever know the truth from a medication that's very inexpensive and, it's very cheap to make? It's not a very expensive drug. Who's going to benefit from it working? People will benefit, but, unfortunately, you got to follow the money sometimes, which I've sadly seen, in medicine. It makes me a little bit sad, but that's why the prevention, like you said, having your family eat healthy and all of that is so important. And one other prevention thing, I'm sure you do some sort of things with your kids, like showing gratitude or doing breath work with kids, or coping, some sort of coping stuff. That's going to be really important for kids and adults. So that way you're more resilient, more adaptable to stress, because when do we get sick? When we're stressed, right?
Yeah.
So So that's going to help. And that's what was so crazy. And that's what's still crazy about this. All this drama and all the news and everything going on in the world, it's so stressful. And some people just internalize it all. And that's not good for your immune system. So we really need to figure out a way to help people get through all of that also.
Well, as far as like, and that all ties in with the fear thing as well. Like you're scared, you're listening to the news, you're listening to all these different things, mask or no mask, but you're killing the old lady if you're not wearing a mask, and then you have a crazy person without the mask yelling, no mask, and then you have the people crazy with the mask. You have everything, the hydroxychloroquine, all that stuff, and it is stressing us all out. What do you suggest, and how do you suggest people go about it and look at it? Is it as scary as what they are screaming about from the top of their lungs now? Like, now that we have more information, is it as scary? Are our immune systems fighting this off? Do you see, what are you seeing as far as that goes? And you talked a lot about the underlying condition type of thing, like where they have a lot of health problems already. What is it that people can do as far as to find good information and to not be so scared, like something that will comfort them when they're looking it up?
Yeah, so I would say I still think that we shouldn't be reckless about it. Some people that are young and healthy, I mean, they are showing that they're having complications further down the road, or you have this post-COVID syndrome. So we don't know everything. I mean, it's a weird virus. It's kind of weird how smart it is that it mutated, and now it's this, it targets the ACE receptors, and it gets, which are on the heart and the lungs and everything. So it's a very sneaky, virus. And, we're seeing there are some outlier cases where kids get sick and don't do well, or young adults with no comorbidities, get sick and don't do well. But overall, it looks like it's, hurting more people that have the more comorbidities. My question is, though, when, say, a 30-year-old, is intubated or needed help breathing for so many days, and they're like, he had no comorbidities, or they had no comorbidities, and in my head I always wonder, I'm like, well, how do you quantify that from an integrative medicine standpoint? When I look at someone, I see tons of patients that are healthy and everything's like normal, they go to their doctor but they still don't feel right, and we find underlying Lyme, Epstein-Barr virus, we find gut health issues such as dysbiosis, we find inflammation, we find autoimmune disease. So then, not to mention the toxic load of if you have emotional stress or an emotional traumatic event, that's gnawing away at your health, because that can also cause illness. So I'm wondering, what's really going on with these younger people that fall worse to that, is their immune system already imbalanced for some reason? So that's what people that they are nervous still about this, I would, focus on good sleep, focus on good mental health, such as meditation or a gratitude journal where you write down 3 things a day you are grateful for. Focus on eating whole foods, so less processed, make your own, use this as a fun time to make up recipes, go to the farmer's market, that kind of stuff, get some select supplements that I spoke about, and really just using this time, exercise, move, to better this should be, I feel like this whole pandemic should be empowering for people to say, I am going to get healthy. This is what, I'm going to empower myself and get healthy and seek out resources, and get help and find a friend to do it with me. So, I would say that, like you said, you don't live in fear. If we worry about the past, that's depression. If we worry about the future, that's anxiety. We need to live in the present and what we could do now. That's like one of my favorite quotes because it's true. So that's what I would tell people that are feeling, on edge still about all this. Just, do what's in your power to do, and just trust too in our healthcare system that the universities are doing the studies, they're doing the paperwork. We're finding out more and more information about this every day. And the awesome thing is, like, unlike the flu pandemic, in the 1900s, we can all like share this information so easily and learn from each other. Imagine back then when there's like messengers and stuff, we didn't have the internet. So this is like awesome. We have all these like resources and we have people doing research. So it's a great time, right?
Yeah, I think, and I believe that wholeheartedly, that there's good people doing awesome work that you're not hearing about because it doesn't sell. And they're not concerned about selling it. They're concerned about fixing it. So it's like sending messages to other people, doing studies and talking back and forth and working through all this that nobody even realizes is going on. There's like good people doing good work is what I say. Good people doing good work. So I kind of hold my faith in that, and that we are super creative and inventive, and we don't let a lot of things stop us. We look at it almost like, oh, this is another challenge. We can go out and do this. I think it's a lot different than what the TV or Twitter or Instagram or Facebook is really shoving out there in our faces. I think in what I see in my daily life is a bunch of calm people just walking around living life. And I see a very rare few that are freaking out in my circle. Now, that's in my circle. That's in my bubble. That's what I do. It's in Texas, not in Ohio. I traveled a lot, and I love to travel, which is what the bummer about this thing is. But you learn there's different like cultures and the way people deal with it. So I don't know what's going on all these other places, but I just feel like it's different than what's being pushed in there. And so I take comfort and not fearful, because I'm like, they're just blowing smoke. And that's not what's really going on. If I look outside my door, life's not as bad as what they're telling me.
Exactly. I agree. I love just like being at my kids' sports games and just people being normal and talking to each other, and my baby going up to like another person's chair and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, do you need space? And they're like, no, we're fine. Just that human interaction is just, it's so reassuring. I'll actually, in my Instagram, which you'll probably list on there, I'll link a really good article where I did my fellowship. A lot of the professors, and then Dr. Weil, I think he wrote the article too, but it had some great integrative medicine strategies that was published. So I'll link that up for your listeners, because reading through it, it's very reassuring. It talks about breath work and, preventative stuff. But yeah, I agree. It's good to get back. We traveled last month. We drove to Myrtle Beach. We wore masks when we had to, but we stayed at a place where we cooked our own food. So we didn't even eat out once. And we just played at the beach. The kids played, and they just were so happy. And it just made me feel so good, because, oh gosh, we were all stuck in our houses for a while,
And just to kind of close it out, like getting back on that topic and the importance of not just kids but adults, but to play sports, to get out and socialize, and to be at the beach like that. I mean, I'm a beach person. I grew up on the beach. We went to Pensacola, and I was like, I'm a fan of Florida now, because if you're on the beach, you see those pictures of people flying over. I try to explain it to people like this. You see those pictures, and they're like, look at all these people rubbing elbows. Well, from up above, it looks like that. But from down there, very rarely on a beach do you see people super close and inside each other's space. They have their own space. They just have a canopy up, and they have chairs set out. And so it looks like from above that everybody's right next to each other. And really, They're not. Like it's nice. So, but the importance of getting out and doing those sort of things and not being like fearful of doing that's actually benefiting your mental health, which benefits your physical health tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important. And it's good for the kids too. Oh, my kids they love playing with other kids. I mean, just imagine not being able to play with your friends. So it's good that things are opening back up again. I'm really hoping it's a mild flu season this year. And I'm just trying to manifest that positive energy with that we're going to have. Well, I mean, you're in Texas, so your winters are a little bit different than in Ohio. We have the snow and all that good stuff up here. But
yes. Well, I'm hoping for the same thing too. Well, before you leave, give everybody like your Instagram handle, where they can find you. This has been fantastic. I've loved it. This has been I love the integrative medicine thing. I love, like, more doctors need to get into more preventative stuff. I thought they're reactionary, but let everybody know where they can find you on your Instagram, your integrative medicine stuff and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hang out mostly on Instagram, where you'll see me kind of down to earth, my everyday there. So it's Integrative Dr. Mom. So Integrative DRMOM. And I also have a blog that I've been neglecting a little bit, but it's integrative.drmom.com. And I'm on Facebook too, Integrative Dr. Mom. My integrative medicine office, you can find all that through my Instagram handle. And like I said, I'll put up that website link for you guys tonight. So when you air this, it will be up. But I really love podcasts. I love social media too, because I feel like you can reach a lot of people this way. It's really gratifying, and thank you so much for having me and reaching out. It's been so fun.
Oh, thank you for being on. I was like so excited. I ran and told my wife, like, she's gonna be on. Like, that's like, so cool. So thank you so much. I hope somebody gets a lot of benefit out of the podcast and some information, and they start following people like yourself so that they can get kind of some truthful answers, because you are unbiased. You talk about, like, I was all about mask at the beginning, and now I'm like learning more, and I'm learning this and practical application of it. And that's the thing that I love to see. So thank you again for being on. This was a blast.
Thank you so much.